I begin in another voice.
Tune in to UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Welcome to another episode of The Dawn of Shades. I'm your host, Gia Scott, and today is June 28th, 2011, and this is episode 514. More about this program and the guests that have provided us with such fascinating conversations can be found on our website, www.exogenynetwork.com. The Dawn of Shades always tries to bring interesting people right to the audience to hear about both new and old ideas. We focus on the people, places, and ideas that don't always make the mainstream news, the kinds of things that are frequently labeled as alternative or paranormal. For the show tonight, if you would like to have a question asked, you can email it to me at giascott@exogenynetwork.com or send it through the virtual auditorium on PalTalk by text. I do monitor the email during the program, so if you're listening outside of the virtual auditorium and would like to have a question answered, you can email it to me and I'll get it asked for you. In the virtual auditorium, remember, just put it into text, and I'll try and catch it as the screen scrolls. And if I don't catch it the first time, feel free to repeat it again. Now, for those of you listening in on a podcast, you can go ahead and email me as well. I'll try and get your questions answered for you, too. If you would like to call in and ask your question over the air, you may call us at 504-273-7379. Once again, that number is our call-in number, and it is 504-273-7379. For those of you who like to feel connected, you can find me on Facebook and on Twitter, so you can link to me there. There's also a Dawn of Shades fan page on Facebook, so you can look to that as well. For the readers, campers, and foodies, check out the articles and blogs. You might find some material that just might interest you. Now, tonight's program is a kind of special program, and we're joined by both Washali and Phyllis King for the program. Washali will only be with us for a brief period of time if she's recovering from a procedure that's temporarily impaired her ability to talk, so she has joined me anyhow for my announcement tonight. Just over 3 years ago, I made the announcement on the air that I had become engaged. That night, Washali was my guest. Now, 3 years may seem like a very long engagement to some, but the time has actually flown by for us, and Gregory and I have finally chosen a date to make our marriage official and legal and share a great gathering with our friends and family members. We're planning a unique and fun wedding, and as part of my lucky charms for it, I wanted Washali to join us again for this announcement. So, Washali, how does it feel to be a lucky charm, sort of rabbit's foot on the hoof?
It reminds me of that commercial. Everyone's always after me, Lucky Charms.
yeah. Well, I did kind of wheedle you into going ahead and coming on even for just a few minutes with your mouth so sore. So I am very glad.
I did want to take a moment, sweetheart, and just speak for the whole listening audience to say that we are just so happy for you and Greg, and we wish you every conceivable, imaginable, normal, and paranormal blessing and happiness there is to be found in the known and unknown universe, and hopefully I think I covered it all there.
Yeah, we couldn't still a little bit low on the paranormal sort of stuff, though, because, you know, that's sort of a mixed thing, you know, and we already have quite a lot of that on our plate, you know. We could do with a little less paranormal sometimes, but I guess beggars can't be choosers, right?
Well,
we have planned a fun wedding. We are doing a hippie wedding, hopefully on the beach. We're looking to confirm exactly where. Hopefully over the coming month we'll get that confirmed. But we want to do it on the beach, and complete with hippie costumes and the whole bit. We're not even calling it a reception, it's a gathering. We're not doing paper invitations, we're being very, very clean. Everybody gets a verbal or email invitation. No paper invitations. I guess we're old enough to realize that packing around all these keepsakes gets a little heavy with time. So, no paper invitations, no formal stuff at all. Nobody has to dress up. And everybody can outfit themselves from the local thrift store if they don't have it in their closet, right?
I would imagine that everybody's got something creative in their closet for a creative event like yours.
Yeah, I have to admit it was kind of different. I had originally suggested that we did, like, you know, Renaissance outfits, and Greg was looking over my shoulder at some of the costume patterns that were available, because I do sew, and I could make it for him. And, you know, I don't know if it was the codpiece, the breeches, the tights, the ruffles on the shirt. Something didn't quite jive with his psyche. And he said, oh, no. Yeah, so we opted for hippie.
Well, I think you'll both look stunning in tie-dye.
I guess I wasn't really particularly worried about it. I don't know for sure what I'm going to wear yet. I've not chosen whatever it is I'm going to wear. Nothing has said, this is it, quite yet. So I'm sure I'll find something.
Will you take pictures and post them on your website?
Oh, of course. And I'm hoping to twist your arm and get you to sort of make a halfway trip around the Gulf Coast from your place to your honey's place, and you can, like, stop off and hang out with us.
Yeah, let me know. I'm looking forward to it, honey. I would love to come in and make a purple appearance.
We would certainly love to have you show up. Actually, the date is October 29th. It's going to be a Saturday. We're going to do the afternoon thing. Statistically, the weather should be beautiful. We all know statistics and Mother Nature not always on speaking terms. So we will have some canopies there, but we're just asking everybody to have a talk with Mother Nature and say, please don't rain that afternoon and evening. We just assume skip the rain. It would be much easier without rain involved. And should there be a nice breeze coming in off the Gulf, some of the locations we've looked at. You may not have the gorgeous white sands that some of Florida is famous for, but it's very Mississippi-ish and should be an excellent place for everybody to have fun, whether they want to play in the water and get their skirt wet or not. Yeah. So it should be a lot of fun.
We wish you so much happiness, sweetheart.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm anticipating our wedding being just as much fun as most of our life is. Not to say that we always are a barrel of monkeys and ha-has, but we do certainly have interesting times together, and usually are on the same page of the book. And if not, we're usually at least in the same chapter, which helps. Yeah, further navigation isn't necessary.
Are you accepting wedding gifts?
Yeah, we will accept wedding gifts. It isn't something that we're asking anybody to do, but yeah, we do.
Okay, excellent. Just thought I'd put that out there because I know I'd like to send you something and just wanted to make sure that was the appropriate etiquette.
Yeah. We have many friends and family that we know won't be able to make it, and in fact, my own sister is going to not be in the United States, and she'll be in Singapore, so she won't be able to come. She has some serious health issues, and travel is difficult with her to begin with. And she says, I'll just left the U.S. to go back after her daughter's wedding, which is next month. And she says, I won't be able to travel back that soon. It's too hard on her. So she won't be able to make it, but I'm sure she will enjoy the pictures and everything the same. So I'm crossing my fingers that my mother will make it. She's supposed to be here then, so barring creek rising and all that kind of good stuff, she will be here. So it'll be a lot of fun, you know, have family, have some friends, and I happen to choose the Gulf Coast to live on, which means I'm like in the middle of nowhere. My granddaughter will be there, though. She'll have just turned a year old, so she should be just at the right stage to have lots of fun with chocolate and sand. Yeah, so that'll be fun, too. Babies are a lot more fun when somebody else is their mom. Yeah. So anyhow, yeah, we're really looking forward to it. And, of course, men just don't seem to be as much into the whole thing. Greg kind of rolls his eyes and tells me whatever I want, except tights and cod pieces and frilled shirts. He did draw the line there. But, you know, that's okay, too. So anyhow, that is our special announcement that we have been waiting to make until we could get Washali on here.
Yay!
Yeah.
And the crowd.
And I thank you very much for coming and joining us tonight long enough for our little announcement.
Thank you, sweetheart, and please pass on my congratulations to Greg. And I'm sure that when the moment comes, he'll get caught up in the excitement.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's excited, too, but men, I don't think, find the nuts and bolts of the whole thing quite as intriguing as women, perhaps. And we're very fortunate. A friend of ours is going to officiate. So the ceremony isn't going to be your cut and paste, you know, everybody in the state gets the same thing. It'll actually be for us. And that's special, too.
Yeah.
You know, rather than a generic ceremony. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. We're excited. And I was hoping to bring her on, too, but she got blessed with a winter cold. I'm starting to wonder, was me in this announcement somewhat cursed?
Well, we're getting it over with so that we'll be in good shape when your event comes.
Yeah, that's kind of what I regarded. You know, Mr. Murphy's little quirks are all coming out now, and that's a good thing. We have plenty of time to recover, revamp, and come up with plans B, C, D, E, F, and G if we need to. So, when moving on from the wedding now to our program tonight, we are fortunate enough to be joined by Phyllis King, who is known as the Common Sense Psychic. Now, Phyllis, could you be so kind as to introduce yourself to the audience?
Hello, audience. I'm Phyllis King, and I am your Common Sense Psychic, and I'm very happy to be here. It's my first time, and to share space for a few moments with someone who I love so dearly, Washali, despite the condition of your throat.
You guys have a great evening. I know that everybody's going to have so much fun with Phyllis, and I'm going to bow out now, and you guys get ready to call in because you're going to want to talk to Phyllis tonight. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Love to you.
And I hope your mouth feels better tomorrow.
Me too.
Definitely, most certainly, she gets to feeling better. So, what is a common sense psychic, Phyllis?
Well, I love the practical and I love the spiritual. You know, I love everything about everything esoteric, everything energy, everything unseen and intangible. But at the same time, I do have a human body, as do most of my clients, and they're kind of concerned about what's happening in their everyday lives, as am I. And so I love that whole relationship about how does spirit and physical interact together. And it's kind of a long story how the name came about to be a Common Sense Psychic, but suffice it to say I had a different name. And when I went on hiatus when my first child came along, someone partook of my domain name, and so I really couldn't go back to that name. They wanted to charge me an arm and a leg. And I had to do a radio show, and I got on the air, and it was the first time after being back from being a mom, and it just kind of came out of my mouth that I'm the common sense psychic, and it just kind of fits who I am. So that's sort of the long and the short version of what's a common sense psychic.
Well, it makes absolute sense to me. Many of us have lost domains because, oops, we forgot to pay that.
Yeah,
and it's
darn.
15 minutes past the deadline, and somebody in China now owns it.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I should be flattered that they think I am so successful that, millions of people are going to be hitting my website, I suppose. But, all things take their perfect and right form, and I changed a lot after becoming a mom, as every person does, every parent does. They change a lot, so it was appropriate, all good and perfect.
Well, I find that as we progress through life, we go through many phases. We talk about the phases of children, but many people don't recognize the phases of adulthood either. And they are just as distinct as those of a child, really.
Yes.
I really found that turning 40 meant incredible freedom.
Yes.
And I turned 50 this year, and I'm anticipating even more freedom. And it's different phases in our life. At 40, I still had, some need, I guess, to conform. At 50, I'm like, oh, Katie, bar the door. I don't need to conform to anything, honey.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I'm starting a new hobby, too. I'm 50 years old. I've never had an interest in my life in mechanics. In fact, for 25 years, I did not even ride a bicycle. I had a bicycle crash that resulted in a trip to the emergency room. A dog had come running out after me, tried to grab my leg, and in the process of getting away from the dog, of course, I ended up road rash. And anyhow, so for 25 years, I basically did not ride bike. Occasionally, I'd borrow my kids' bike because they were sure that there's no way I could ride. They'd never seen me ride one. So once a decade or so, I'd borrow it and go to the post office or something. But I didn't ride a bike. Last year, I got a bicycle. Now, with age, we discover things like we don't work as good as we used to. Our mind still does. Mind still thinks we should. But you go to move, and it's like, where is that leg? It's behind me still. We just don't heal as quickly. We don't move as quickly. And that further, faster thing, I was like, okay, I'm wearing out before I, get too terribly far. Or I'm afraid I'm going to wear out and won't be able to get home. Neither one are conducive to fun bicycling. I was looking on the internet one night, and lo and behold, I see these motors to put on bicycles. And I was like, here's the best of both worlds. I can ride my bike, and when I get tired, it rides it for me. So tomorrow my new motor kit for a bicycle is supposed to arrive.
Nice.
And I'm going to install a motor on a bicycle. Now, granted, for about what ultimately it'll cost to do this project, I could buy one pre-done. But these two-cycle motors happen to require a lot of tinkering with, and I figured if I was going to have to tinker with it to make it go, I should know what a carburetor was and what it looked like, and I should know where the fuel petcock valve is and what it looks like. The easiest way to do that is simply sit down with the directions in the video and do it myself. By the time I get done, I'll know how to make it go.
Wow, well, good for you. I'm sure you will.
Well, that's a 50-year-old woman's new hobby. I didn't forget cross-stitch. I did that a long time ago. That was boring. Motors, bicycles, yeah!
Yeah, I love it.
Yep, that's the new hobby. So everybody thinks I'm nuts. But that's what I decided I wanted to try doing now.
Well, that's pretty much, you're assured you're on the right track if everybody thinks you're nuts. You're doing something important.
Yeah, well, they thought I was many times doing things that were nuts. Sometimes they were right. Sometimes maybe it wasn't the best choice, but it seemed like the best choice that I could make at the time. When you're choosing between a rock and a hard place and a rocky spot, yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, like I tell my daughter, kids don't come with owner's manuals, and one doesn't arrive in the mail later either. So sometimes your choices may not make sense, to anyone else. They make sense to you sometimes. Maybe sometimes they don't. You just choose on the fly. But they don't arrive with owner's manuals, and I think she's begun to really see the point. My granddaughter's 8 months old. And,
she's starting to get wind of it.
Yeah. So I'm anticipating the next 18 years with my granddaughter as being so much fun for me.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be.
My mother always said a child gives her mother 10 times what she gave her mother, and oh boy, is my daughter in for some fun. Yeah, I kept teasing her before the baby was born. I said, you ought to name her Revenge. She just feels very funny.
Cute.
Yeah. So, in terms of what you do and being a common sense psychic, I've talked to many other kinds of psychics, ranging from those who use tarot cards to those who use various other tools. Do you use any kind of a tool to help you?
Well, how I tune into someone's energy is through their name, their first name. That's just how my switch flips. Didn't always work that way. I mean, I had a lot of spontaneous experiences happen throughout my life, meaning seeing dead people, having a lot of precognitive experiences, seeing a lot of stuff that you don't ordinarily see in a normal state of consciousness. And so I sort of put myself on a path to self-discovery to say, what is this stuff? Why me? And how does it fit into the grand scheme of life, to God, to universe? And so I've been on a pretty long journey, my whole life pretty much. And so there was a period of time in my early 20s when I used tarot cards. They really helped me focus, and I could do it on call as opposed to just have it happen to me. And then through other processes, those became more of a hindrance to me, and I just really like just having a vast landscape to pull information from. And so I've been reading by just reading energy through a person's name for, 25 years at this point. And it works for me. I love it that way. And so even if 5 people call the show and they all have the same name, Susan, I don't know why, but their information just downloads to me. I can't quite figure it out. It's just how it works for me.
Maybe somehow there's something connected to their name that says, this is the Susan, that I am, or whatever.
Yeah, because I certainly have lots of clients that have the same name, but, who knows? It works for me, and, everybody has their method, and that's mine.
Yeah. And, when you talk about spontaneous psychic experience, I guess, the first thing that came to my mind was the experience I had. I was out with some friends. We had been doing some sky watching because I know a number of people who are serious about UFOs and aliens and related phenomena. And we were out by the water, and I was leaning up against the truck and just kind of zoning, not really thinking about anything. Everybody else was off doing something, whatever. And I was just leaning against the truck, kind of zoning. And it was like all of a sudden there was some sort of a time shift, and I was seeing the same scene at some different time period. The trees were all moved, the things were gone, and other things were there, and it was kind of a weird, because the people were gone too. I mean, it was kind of a weird, startling sort of thing to be looking at all of a sudden. As a complete change in the shoreline. I mean, it was like, whoa, what happened here? You barely recognize it as the same place. And, in the course of the next half hour, I learned, you can almost switch back and forth. I could flip back to where I was and then back to wherever this was. And so it kind of became a curiosity, and I was like, I don't know what I was looking at. I don't know what purpose it would ever serve, but it was kind of strangely bizarre and interesting at the same time.
Yeah, I should say.
I would say I really don't have, any psychic tendencies myself, but, I have had a large number of what you call paranormal events in my life, ranging from ghostly encounters to things that have been mentally filed in my weird file. I have a My fat, little weird file.
Your weird file, I like that. Well, for me, it's all, psychic is a broad term, and it tends to cover everything for me because there's so much energy on the word. It covers, For me, when I was like 5 years old, I started seeing formless shapes fly around my house, things of this nature. Noticing entities around me, and I've had other friends who they've called these floaters. Then I started having astral projection and out-of-body experience probably around age 5 and 6, where, I could be in one place, people I know or whatever would be in another, and I could know what they're talking about verbatim. And a lot of these things I never spoke about. I didn't know what psychic was, and I was raised in a pretty religious family, so I don't know, I just knew not to bring these things up. And then, of course, I started having a lot of precognitive experiences through dreams in my teenage years. I'd just go to sleep, wake up, and my dream would transpire within 24 to 48 hours. And that was actually kind of cool. I liked that feeling of being connected to life in that way. But it was when a friend of mine who passed away in a car accident showed up in my house. That kind of rocked my world, and I finally said, all right. What is this?
Yeah.
So, I guess that's paranormalish when you talk ghosts or whatnot, but, that was sort of my beginnings.
I have, knowing a number of people that are strongly psychic, but I would say they don't feel as though they have control over it. And trying to imagine, if you're doing this for a living, you need to have control over it because you've got to be able to access it on demand. And, there's a big gap between being able to do it spontaneously and being able to do it on demand. How do you start to bridge that?
Well, this is what I teach a lot of psychic development courses, and one of the things that always amazes me is that oftentimes beginners are some of the most powerful psychics because their antennae are just like out there on receive, and they blow my mind with some of the stuff they do. But the things I teach right away are, first you make your body let's call it a clean vehicle, a clean mechanism. You learn how to ground your body. You learn how to run energy, because really what you're doing is learning how to interpret information through your mechanism. And then you have to you kind of have to get a sense of what your mechanism is. Am I visual? Am I auditory? Am I sensory? Am I a combination of both? Because everybody can receive it differently. So once you kind of figure out how to make your body safe and how to control your area so you can let in what you want and keep out what you don't want, it just becomes a process of practice at that point. And I have folks in my psychic development class, they're reading by the 4th week of class, and they're doing it on call. And it's really a joy to watch. I love doing that work.
Yeah, that would be pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Do you find that there's a great deal of variation in natural ability? And is natural ability a real critical thing, or is it something that almost everybody can develop to use?
Well, I think we all have it. I think it depends on how bad you want it, and B, how interested you are in it. And typically, the greater your interest, typically the more natural ability you tend to have. I'm not going to find people enrolling for my class who have no interest or haven't had any experiences. And pretty much within short order, most people reveal themselves. It's clear that they're more a medium, or they're more auditory, or they're more sensory. It makes itself evident right away as you start to employ a few, tools and, things that, it just makes it apparent. So it's not necessarily rocket science. There's just a lot of practice involved in terms of recognizing your own signals. And, a lot of times I just have to deprogram them from when they come into class and say, what are your expectations? What do you think a psychic is? Because they might be trying to be what someone else thinks they should be. Oh, I saw this psychic on TV, and this is what she's doing or he's doing. And maybe that is or isn't right for that person. So sort of deprogramming from what culture or mainstream society has told you a psychic is also part of the process. Mm-hmm. But, I think we all have it. we all came to this planet with sensory perception, extrasensory on some level, and just about how bad you want it and how important it is to you to own it.
Well,
I can tell you some of these Psychic Development 1 students blow my mind. Oh, my God, these people come into class and, I don't know if I can do it, Phyllis. You know, and then on week 3 or 4, they're just like doing the most amazing things. And it just goes to show that's some pretty serious talent.
One thing that I've often heard say is not a psychic talent, yet I try to understand how it could not be, is remote viewing. Do you regard that as something that's done via psychic ability, or is it something that is much more clinical and scientific and whatnot?
I personally feel that it's psychic. I mean, that's a spontaneous experience that I had as a child. I didn't know anything about it. I just did it. I didn't know what I was doing. I just did it. So I think it's part of the package. But, I'm glad that science can recreate some of the things we do, if it's possible. Science can't validate a lot of what we do, but if they can make that happen, cool.
Well, I was curious. There's I forget his name right now. He was a general or some sort of military title. Anyhow, he's often talked about the military's remote viewing project. And he says, oh, no, it's not a psychic thing. Anybody can do it. And I'm like, you know what? If it's not psychic, what is it? It's not exactly like it's, you plug a wire in the guy's head. Major Ed Dames, thank you, Nye Lilly from the Virtual Auditorium. He's the one that's often said that, I'm like, how can it not be a psychic ability to do this? How else could it be done? I couldn't figure out a way. I've never heard him answer the question as to, if it's not psychic, what is it? But he's often said it's not psychic, it is something that anybody can do. And I'm like, well, everybody has some psychic ability, so logic says that...
Exactly.
It's just like everybody has the ability to walk to one degree or another. Some of us can run in the Olympics, and some of us are doing good across the room.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I don't know how you couldn't do it if you don't have either your clairvoyant piece intact or at least your ability to trust and sense what you're seeing and feeling. I just can't imagine how it would be created under any other circumstance.
I couldn't figure out any other method it could be conducted. I mean, it absolutely makes no sense to me. It has to be a psychic thing. Yeah. Apparently,
and I can't imagine the military could condone any form of psychic whatever. They couldn't.
That's probably why they said it wasn't psychic.
Yeah.
Is that way it was acceptable, because it's well known and documented they did have a remote viewing project. Whether they do still or not is up in the air, but at least at one point they did. And they were conducting active experiments with it. They were having some success with it. If it's not psychic, what is it? Well, they didn't like the psychic idea. So it's not psychic. It's something else. It's remote viewing. Yeah.
Oh, that is very funny.
Yeah, well, I guess it's par with the military and the $200 hammer. So, it's got to be good, right?
Yes, yes.
So besides teaching other people how to use their psychic abilities, what other kinds of things do you do?
Well, I teach life mastery courses and in 6-week and 12-week increments. And, because one of the things that when I became a professional psychic, I started doing a lot of copying other famous psychics who are really rich. Because I'm like, I'm going to do what they're doing and then I'll get really rich, right? Well, and so I do things like giving names and numbers and street names, and I got really good at it. And I thought, okay, this is good, but I found it very empty for me personally. So I told you something that stimulated you for a moment. So what? So I thought, well, what's made the difference for me in my life? And that has been learning about what my purpose is on the planet. What am I doing here? What the hell am I doing here? What's going on? Why am I bumping up against all these various experiences, whatever? And so I became fascinated with looking at people's life themes, their core issues, and that's always the first part of my readings on the phone or in person, so I can start to see who this person is as a spirit, not just as a body. And that's how I receive people's impressions. So from that standpoint, my business began to change from just being a traditional psychic to, also sort of delineating people's experiences spiritually. Because, along my personal quest to say, what is this psychic stuff, it was like, well, what does it mean in the grand scheme? So it's for my personal consumption as well. And then I found during my readings, I couldn't just say, yes, this relationship is going to work or not. I had to tell them why or what they could do to make things different. And so I've studied with a lot of various teachers, not the least of which is the wonderful Washali, and she and I do a lot of workshops and such together now, but I really like her information as well. And so I've developed my own program over a number of years, and the Life Mastery course helps people move beyond the limitations in their space, whether it's in abuse, whether it's they have relationship troubles or finance troubles or whatever family troubles, whatever the ordeals are, the solution is always the same, and helping people shift their perspective is really wonderful work for me. So that's pretty much what I do, the classes and psychic development, and then I still do one-on-one readings. I still love that.
Just out of curiosity, how in 6 or 12 weeks can you teach Life Mastery? I know people that have gone nearly 60 years and haven't mastered anything.
That's a great question, actually. They haven't mastered their life, but what everybody gets is their pieces are on the table. A lot of times people have lived asleep in their lives, and so I get them awake so they can see what is working in their lives, so they can see what influences are going on, and they can take ownership of it, and they can be in the driver's seat rather than having life happen to them. So everybody who comes to me gets that piece. And, different people, some people continue on and, go more than 12 weeks or whatnot, but they get their pieces, and they get a big chunk of perspective shift. And that's a good beginning for a lot of folks. And then are you going to continue it from there? And are you going to do it on your own with me or with someone else? Or, it's just a good foundation and starting place for a lot of people. And I do have some clients who are really high functioning, and they just come to me to kind of kick it up and get it to another level. So not everybody who comes to me is broken and in a bad state.
Okay. Do you ever have unwilling people come into your class? Ones that somebody else is dragging, kicking, and screaming.
Those are my favorite ones. Usually, I don't have it often, but Selah, I do group reading events also where, there'll be 30 or 35 people who come, and I read everyone in the room. And someone might come with a spouse or a friend who just tagged along. And sometimes those are the most fun people, or by the end of the event, they're really interested. I had a woman show up in my office and brought her husband with her, and he sat there most of the time with his arms crossed until about 40 minutes into the reading. Then he started asking questions, and then about a week after the reading, he called me up and hired me to consult for his investment firm. It's just fun how things work out. So, I just look at it as an opportunity to bring information to whoever is sitting in front of me.
Most people that I know that have really used some Life Mastery classes are the least likely to seek help for themselves. They absolutely believe there's nothing wrong. Why fix what's not broken? They don't see the breaks. They don't see the problem because to them it's just fine. So I was just wondering, do other people ever drag people in, literally?
Well, not to mine because, my course is, you got to pay. There's not, and I'm not charging people to gouge people, but I think that when people plunk down some money, they're investing in themselves, and that they want to get something from it. And most people who would take my Life Mastery course, for instance, they know they've either listened to my radio shows or been to group reading events or heard of me in some way. They check me out, and they know how it goes for me. They're not going to step into it unless they kind of know what I'm about. And then, there's other people who've heard about it. I always do a 30-minute consultation for free for people. Gives them an opportunity to experience what's going to happen as they step into the energy. But rarely does anybody come to my class who doesn't want to be there. I think more in a group reading event where it's more of a lighter format, you get a broader range of people who might think, be more skeptic or whatnot.
Yeah. Now, we do have a question from the virtual auditorium which kind of takes us back a little bit. So the question is, in order to develop a specific psychic ability, such as psychometry or precognition, do you have to practice the specific ability, or can you practice any of them and wind up developing any or all of them?
Yes to both questions. You really do need to practice the one thing. To get, like when I used to always get names and dates, I was really practicing getting names and dates. I used to just really do that, and so when I talk to my client, who's Emily, and does she live on, Anderson Street, and is she living in North Dakota? And I would try and just right off the bat give a lot of specificity in that type of dialogue. Now, since I'm not as concerned with it, it'll still come, but that's not the information I'm going for. So you can train your intuition to do what you want with it. But the more you open your channels and the more you work your psychic, quote-unquote, muscle, it'll all come. The whole gig to psychic reading is you ask a question, you wait for the answer. And it doesn't matter what area you're doing it in. You ask and you wait for the answer, and it's pretty much that easy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You didn't know
now, here
that,
I'm going to ask you a question that's, easy is relative. Here's a question that's not specifically related to what you do, but it's one that I've often mulled over, and I've asked other people, too, for some clarification. When I'm talking to people, I will talk to people who say, I channel, and I'll talk to other people who say, I'm a psychic medium. Now, what is the difference between channeling and receiving information psychically?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, to me, when I'm channeling, I'm actually bringing in an entity into my body. I do not channel. I mean, not never, but rarely will I ever channel. I don't want anybody in my body. I don't want any entities in my body. No, thank you. But I do medium work, and then I am connecting to the essence and the consciousness of that deceased person. And that has a very different feel to me than channeling or psychic reading.
Okay.
So that's how it is for me.
Now that creates a clearer picture in my mind. In the case of channeling, they're actually inside of you. As a medium, you got a pipe connecting you. And, as a psychic medium, they're hollering down the tube.
I like that. Yeah, good.
Well, yeah, I like really visual things, and the simpler they are, when we all have things happen to us that there's no rhyme or reason, it's just one of these crazy things that happens. Well, I blame it all on the ladies of fate. Now, the ladies of fate, you know who the red hat ladies are, in their red hats and their purple dresses and red shoes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, imagine them on crack, okay? They've got really wild clothes. Bright red lipstick, loud eyeshadow, big gaudy earrings. Yeah, lots of rings on their fingers and bells on their toes. Yeah, blue hair, the whole bit. There's 12 of them up there in that jury box, okay? Just like old Ironside programs, there's a jury box up there in the cloud somewhere. And they're up there cackling their head off, looking down at me and throwing whatever it is at me.
I love it.
That's my lady's face. That's who I blame for all the goofy, crazy, inconvenient, aggravating things that happen in life. The lady's face. Yeah. Other people blame Mr. Murphy. No, lady's face up there cackling like crazy. Yeah, old lady's on crack.
That's great.
I love imagery. You know, I really do. You know, I'm really good at it. Okay, I have to admit. Not every mind can cook up these ladies up there in that jury box for the Ironclad program. Right?
I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, the scary thing is I do all this stuff, and I'm not using anything more fascinating to drink than some spiced chai or maybe some coffee if it's a heavy-duty day.
Yeah.
Yeah, who needs drugs? They got me.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, you know, I do like imagery. I like to create simple images to explain complex ideas, and then of course I have the Lady's Fate, which is my comic relief. It's like the little guy Fear. Okay, Fear, you know, it's a big boogeyman to most people, but no, for me, Fear is a little green guy, and he sits on my shoulder, and he's kind of hairy and lumpy and bumpy and got warts and stuff. And he always sits on my shoulder and he whispers. Now, sometimes he's just, you know, being a sort of pain in the butt, but other times he's telling me to pay attention to things for good reason, you know. Don't jump off that bridge. The water is deep down there. That's good reason. There's a good reason to be afraid. Don't go there because you might meet a stranger. No, that's a stupid reason, you know. So you have to pick and choose what you listen to with the little guy. But I tell everybody the day that Fear's not sitting on my shoulder whispering in my ear, that's the day I should be really afraid because he got up and left. Yeah, I use imagery in every facet of my life, right down to Fear has got a little cartoonish character with green, lumpy, bumpy, warts, fur, scales. He's got it all. Yep, if I was to become a psychic, I'd have to be the cartooning psychic. Never mind, I can't draw words, really.
Well, he's certainly very likely clairvoyant.
But that's my characters of life, yeah. Everybody else has imaginary friends. I have imaginary pseudo-friends, sort of enemies. Never know what they're going to do. Like the green guy on my shoulder and the ladies in the jury box. Yeah. And if I want somebody to talk to that I know will never ever repeat any of it to anybody else, Red Dog has been my buddy for years. Yeah, I know I can trust her with my secrets too. Yeah, she's listened to many of the years.
Yeah.
And I've learned to listen to her. People who say that dogs can't talk have never spent time in close quarters with one over a long period of time. Dogs tell you a lot.
Absolutely.
When I was single and dating, if I listened to her, I would have never had some of the terrible dating experiences I had.
Well, now you've learned.
Yeah, now I've learned. Red had better sense than I did. Yeah. Oh, she adored Greg from the minute she saw him.
Nice.
But, you know, yeah, she's done terrible things to people like guys I was dating.
Wow.
Which indicated, you know, she never bit anybody, but it indicated that some of them weren't too bright. Like the one guy, she rammed him with her front feet. Now, she's a large dog. She's, well, in her youth, she was 70, 80 pounds. And roughly the size of a collie, but much bulkier, broader and everything. She hit him with her front feet and knocked him about 8-10 feet back into a wall.
Wow.
And Mr. Rocket Scientist stands up after he picks himself up, after he slid down the wall. He said, "Did she do that on purpose?" And I'm kind of wondering why he would ask such a thing if she did that on purpose. So his offense was he got too close to me. She didn't like it, obviously. And so he did it again, so she did it again. And he concluded that, yes, she did it on purpose. And I concluded, you know, not only does he talk too much, but he's dumber than a box of rocks. So we didn't go out with him again.
Well, I would listen to my animal, that's for sure. Animals have incredible intelligence, and they speak in an amazing language, so I listen.
You know, I don't know if dogs are, in general, all psychic or not. If they sense things on a different level than we do, how they know the things that they do. But, you know, my daughter swears that Red communicates with her in dreams. And, you know, often in the past years, I've had her call me up and say, you know, such and such is going on, and Red Dog's concerned about it. And I'm like, huh? How did you know? I mean, at that time, she lives halfway across the country from me. How did you know that's going on, you know?
I've had a lot of animal communication through dreams.
Yeah, the dog told me.
Yeah.
You know, she actually refers to the dog as her sister. My sister told me. Yeah, so obviously Red Dog has pretty high status in our family anyhow. My daughter refers to my sister. But, yeah, you know, and I'm like, there's no way she could have known it any other way. I mean, absolutely not. You know, how I was feeling emotionally, because there's some things you don't tell your daughter, adult or not. And how I was feeling emotionally, whether I was feeling very, very stressed out, how I was feeling about a relationship, whatever it was that was bothering the dog would tell my daughter, who did call me on the phone. And I'm like, dog, you could have just told me, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
But, I found that a fascinating thing on occasion. Mm-hmm. Do you often have experiences where animals communicate with you?
Well, yeah, I talk to my animal. I only have one animal right now, but people have me talk to their animals. I mean, in the context of a reading. And I, like you were talking about your daughter, and I have had amazing experiences in a sleep state or partial sleep state, receiving information from an animal, and it's really advanced. And I think that they're just, you know, they're not playing the game of the human experience the way we are, and so they can just say what consciousness is and is saying to us. So I've just found it really amazing, and some of the things I've experienced with animals over the years has blown my mind, actually. So I have a lot of respect for animals, and I'm a huge animal advocate, and yeah. But mostly at this point, just for the conditions of my life, I have children, so I don't have a lot of room for animals, but people do ask me about their pets.
Yeah, we were just joined by our third rescue dog. He showed up at my daughter's house, a Chihuahua. And after he hung around all day and we finally coaxed him to come in to us and eat, we noticed he was extremely skinny and was covered in fleas and ticks, had no color, and then we started looking for his home. And we never found one, and I said, well, we can't just leave him to be eaten by something or run over by a car. So now we have 3 dogs and 2 cats, and just the 2 of us, and we're being outvoted.
That's a house full.
Yeah, we have a very small house, so, and we have 2 dogs that cannot be put together at all, ever.
Okay.
So that makes life even more entertaining because everything has to be done in a certain order so that Sissy, the Feist, can't get, well, she actually can't get near anybody because she just has issues, I guess. She's my challenge child. After all these years, she still doesn't get it on a lot of things, and she doesn't learn new things very easily, and so we just accept that Sissy has some limits and work around them. She will never shut up, so if you need her to shut up, you've got to put her where she can't see anything. Because if she can see anything, she's losing her vision now, so it's a lot of shadows, I think, to her. And so everything looks like a boogeyman. And, if she sees anything, then it's yap, 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 and nonstop. And that really can annoy people quickly, and she wears out her welcome quickly. But she is, she's a sweetheart within her parameters, and she is our challenged one. Nemo's our newest one, and he's only been with us about 6 weeks now, I guess, so his personality is still coming out, you might say, as we get to know him. He actually acquired his name because my mother and my granddaughter were watching Nemo, the cartoon, when... So that's how he got his name. We usually call him the little guy. He's way small compared to everybody else. Yeah, he's smaller than the cats even. I have a cat that looks like a bowling ball with fur on it. Looks like that for years. Calico bowling ball, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and I noticed on your website you've had Karen Anderson on the show, and she's one of my favorite folks, and I love her book, Hear All Creatures, and you know she definitely gets it right when it comes to talking to animals.
We've had a number of animal psychics come on over the years, and they're always fascinating. We've had the lady who created, forget exactly, they're on the website. They're like animal companion oracle cards or something like that. And it's like, I don't want to insult anybody, but it's like tarot for dummies.
Okay.
To deal with your animals. So everything on the card to deal with the animals. And it does work. I actually got a tarot card reader that I consider to be more than competent. And I said, take a look at these cards and tell me what you think of them. And she said, we played with them for a couple hours that day alone. And she said, these cards are fun. I mean, they're simple and to the point, but there's not a lot of studying involved, so this is really simple for people who are not willing to spend years learning all the different nuances and meaning. It's written right on the card. There's no memorizing required. As long as you keep your questions simple, these are very relevant cards. And so they were fun to play with. And we used them in more than just animal-related questions because you could apply the same concepts to human questions, Right. Granted, we're not going to be as concerned about fleas or things, but we might be concerned about parasites or skin problems or whatever, So there's some interpretation when you apply it to humans, but as long as you're sticking to the animals, it was like very, very simple, very easy to use for the average person to gain some insight into maybe why things are going the way they are and what the solution could be. I know I consulted all sorts of people about Sissy and Red's conflict. We now know it revolves around Sissy and there is no resolution. She's not going to win because she's not going to be the only dog in the house. She wasn't the first one and she's not going to be the only one. So the only solution is, because she can't be rehomed, nobody wants her. She's too old and whatnot, so it was a case of, if you're not going to put her to sleep, you're going to adapt. And obviously I wasn't going to put her to sleep, and I'm attached to her anyhow. Mm-hmm. So we just adapted our life to Sissy has issues, and we just need to work around them. Because Red wasn't going to give up her role as Queen Bee and Empress of the Universe, and so forth and so on. It was an unsolvable problem. So I consulted trainers, that's everybody under the sun. Plus, I have a lifetime of working with dogs professionally and as a hobbyist. It's like, I'm not seeing a solution here because the issue I'm seeing is not solvable. And I guess, maybe in a sense I was psychically right, or right by understanding how dog psyche works. Take your pick.
Right.
But, yeah. So in terms of what else you do, you do the private readings, you do the group readings, you do expansion systems, the life mastery. I do have to ask some more questions about that. The whole life mastery issue is pretty complex, but you know what? It is time for us to go on break, so we're going to hold off on that question. And folks, we will return in just a few minutes, so stay tuned. And the Dawn of Shades will return with Phyllis King. In the meantime, you can check out our website at www.exogenynetwork.com, and we'll be right back.
Can see you think of
welcome back to the Dawn of Shades. I'm your host, Gia Scott, with our guest, Phyllis King. And once again, I would like to remind everyone to visit our website, www.exogenynetwork.com. You can sign up for the newsletter, wander around, and explore the website, and let me know what you think of it. And if you are looking to find yourself some links, there's links there to take you to blogs, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. If you're looking to go straight to my blog and find out what I've been up to, it's giascott.wordpress.com. Now, for our topic tonight, it is a fascinating one, as always, and we are fortunate enough to have Phyllis King joining us. So if you would like to ask her a question or make a comment, you can email it to me at giascott@exogenynetwork.com, and I'll pass it on from there. If you're listening on a podcast or thinking of it after the program is finished, go ahead and send it to me. I'll do my best to get your questions answered. If you're in the virtual auditorium, just put it in the text there, and I'll try to catch it as the screen scrolls. If you want to call in, our number is 504-273-7379. So, just before we went on break, Phyllis, we were talking about your life mastery courses. They seem to somewhat fascinate me. So, could you tell us a little bit more about those?
Okay, sure. Well, you said something in our last conversation in the previous hour about, easy is a relative term, because there's really only a couple of things people have to digest and own in their body, not just their intellect, but their mind, their body, and their heart, to get to life mastery. And one of those is you have to own and identify that you're more than a body, and that the essence of who you are is far superior and has far more power, intention, and purpose than your physical body, your ego state could ever have. And you have to begin to see the world through that perspective. And we've been programmed, trained, culturalized, and conditioned to believe that the physical experience is the dominant experience, and that is what we're supposed to always be reacting to, when it's actually the reverse, that the physical experience is the symptom, if we want to call it that, of the spiritual consciousness. And so that's the first piece to life mastery, getting people back acquainted with what they truly already know. And of course, when we talk 2012, that's what this change is all about, that we're already in. It's about reclaiming our spiritual identity. And then from that place, much of it has to do with retraining the perspective. When people talk to me about, this is happening to me, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough money, my relationships all suck, my family is this, whatever, and then it's a process of getting people to make separation from their story and quit identifying with pain and quit identifying with these experiences in the physical as who they are. And that goes back to identifying with that you're a soul in a human body. And then, of course, we just take the specifics down, because we come to the planet to learn and grow. That's what we're here to do. And so then we break it down. How do you identify what it is you're supposed to be learning and growing beyond? The life purpose piece that I'm fascinated with, as is my good friend Vishali. And it really always comes down to, what are you feeling? What are you left with in a situation? Do you feel abandoned? Do you feel rejected? Do you feel disposable? Do you feel whatever it is that you're left with in any situation? That's what you're supposed to be evolving beyond. And too often we're focused on something other than that. People will say, well, in a relationship situation, I know I want someone who's not short. I know I want someone who likes comedies. I know I want someone who likes to go do things or stay home or walk the beach. And those are all things you put on Match.com. They have nothing to do with what is going to attract you to a partner. You're attracted to people who are going to help you heal your own wounds. And so we have to really work on the perspective. And once you get the game and the practice of identifying your story in your life, and you work towards shifting the perspective and identifying with yourself as a soul, as an essence, not just a body, it really becomes much easier to navigate this life experience. And that's the Life Mastery course in Walnut Shell.
Uh-huh. I find that interesting. You know, a lot of people aren't as fortunate as me. In actuality, Greg is like my best friend. We've been buddies for years. Talk to each other through sort of bad relationships and whatnot. So it's really like he's almost my co-writer.
Yes.
We're not the same. Don't get me wrong. He can aggravate the tar out of me. I can drive him absolutely buck shit. But within the realms of tolerable. We don't push each other's buttons too much or anything like that. It's like we're heading the same place, so it works out great for us. And to have somebody that you could share, the good and the bad and the boring and the mundane and the exciting and the crazy and the wacky and the responsible stuff all together with, hey, that's fantastic. Most people, I don't think, ever have that fortune. I think about past relationships with me. I was the queen of the 6-month relationship. I was good at it. And I really did I had serious commitment issues. I'll admit that too. I had serious commitment issues. The idea of committing to anybody was like, I don't think so. I don't know why it was different with Greg, but it was. And I did. I had commitment issues. I just didn't want to be bothered. I didn't want to be tied down. I didn't even want to cohabitate. You need your own space over yonder, someplace away from me. So, now that we're living in small quarters together and we're outnumbered by animals, we still like each other too. That's a good sign.
Nice.
If you can survive small quarters with somebody and you still like each other, I think all couples should have to spend 6 months living in itty-bitty quarters, because you will know if there's any weak spot in that relationship, small quarters will always illustrate it in big neon letters. That's my assessment right there, Cram them in a travel trailer for 6 months, see if they still like each other then.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I think, too, for me, when people are saying, when am I going to meet the perfect person, or when is my soulmate arriving, or whatever, it's really about, can you be yourself? Can you continue to grow and evolve and be who you are in the context of that situation? Does it support you in that? And if you have that going, that's a good relationship. That's a nice, benevolent place to be.
And it is. For me, I was at a point in my life, I already knew there are worse things than being alone. The worst thing of all is to be with somebody I wish you were alone. That's the honest to God truth. Okay, I had a lot of friends who thought unless they had a guy attached to them, their life had no meaning. I'm like, come on, you can have a whole lot of fun without being that dependent on everybody. A relationship should be the gravy in your life, not the soul-sustaining thing to your life.
Right.
And that's a very difficult concept for people, especially when you're younger, perhaps. But then again, since I had a lifetime issue, nobody took me particularly seriously. But I would say being single most of my life, because this will be my second marriage, so I wasn't single my whole life. But most of my life I was. I learned how to be single really well, and I don't have any regrets about being single, because I lived my life. I had the freedom to do what I wanted to do. I had the freedom to explore the things I wanted to explore. I didn't have the obligations of maintaining a relationship, and especially if you're in a bad relationship, that's a high maintenance thing to have thrown around with.
Exactly.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand that sometimes you're just better off to do your own thing and do your own growing without having to worry about your companion's growth.
Yes.
And
I think we are programmed and culturalized from a young age, at least in Western culture, that this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to grow up and get married and pop out a certain amount of kids and all that by a certain age. And then when it doesn't turn out, we think, well, how did I fail? What did I do wrong? I followed the rule book.
Yeah, and being a nonconformist and a person with commitment issues, I did things all out of order. I had my kids, and then I got married, and then I got divorced, and now years later, as a 50-year-old woman, I'm getting married again. This time for the right reasons, and that's a good thing, as Martha Stewart would say. And it is, and I feel very, very fortunate to have had the freedom in my life that I've had. That, to be able to explore who I really am. And we were talking about phases in our life earlier. I've gone through many phases in my life. And one of the most important phases that I went through in my 40s was really exploring who am I and what do I want. Because I was free of the responsibilities of children and spouse and whatnot. It was time to look at who I was. Yeah. And that was an important journey for me. Not to say that it was always a fun one, because sometimes it's boring and sometimes it's stressful and sometimes it's lonely. It could be lonely too. But there are many worse things than being lonely.
This is true. That's very true. And it seems to me, you say I had commitment issues, whatever, but clearly those were the right choices for you, and they made your life. Yeah,
with hindsight, there was reasons why I just couldn't commit myself into that relationship because it really wasn't right for me. And maybe the cognitive part of me was saying, well, this meets society's norms, blah, 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 blah. And it was like, no, I can't do it. And for me, those were the right decisions at the time. But to everybody else looking at me, it was like quite obvious I had commitment issues, and I knew I did. I did not want to commit. It was a frightening, terrifying, risky thing to do. And maybe it's because I do take commitment serious. So, yeah. Maybe it was a bad thing, maybe it wasn't. Hindsight and being in that moment aren't necessarily going to give you the same sorts of information, because we can see things clearer once we walk past them.
Yes.
Now, on your website, we were talking earlier about psychic development and the fact that you taught classes, and I find that interesting. And I'm sure many, many other people do too, but not all of us live in California nor can travel to California. And, for some reason I just don't anticipate you booking a location in Pascagoula, Mississippi and teaching a course.
Well, not next week, that's for sure. Never say never. But, this is part of the reason I created the CD series. It's 5 hours of guided instruction. And it gives you the basic tools you can practice in the privacy of your home to learn how to clean out your little universe and make your body safe to do the work. And but the part that you don't get on the CDs is what I call the reading workshop. You get a reading workshop included in the CD so you can see how it goes, how to structure a reading and all that. But there's nothing like being in the classroom setting with me and other students and having me guide you through it. So you have to be pretty self-disciplined, and there does come a point in the course where I say you should really try and do this with a friend, because you just need to have that feedback. But you can get a lot of the tools that I teach, and there's a process in there to help you connect to your primary spirit guide and your primary healing guide, and there's a lot of great stuff in there. And it's a great beginning tool for people who are really trying to get focused and directed on their intuitive development.
Well, I found it interesting, too. It's at an affordable price. For those of you who are listening that are interested in doing such a thing, don't want to invest your life savings, it's only $25.
And I do offer lifetime email support. Anybody who embarks on that journey, I'm always here. I never go away.
Okay, that's a great thing. So for $25, which is, for most people, you're lucky if you can go out for dinner and not spend over $25.
That's right.
So even in Mississippi, and it's a bad dinner, you're still lucky if you don't spend more than $25. It's nearly $20 even if you just go into Waffle House for breakfast, as a matter of fact. So, it's affordable. It's a reasonable way to try it. You've also written a book, right?
Yeah, I have a couple of books.